Well, welcome to your introduction video to HTML, pretty much the language of the web. HTML is typically not referred to as a programming language, though with HTML5 it is definitely has that capability. But it's a markup language. It actually stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it's used to create web pages. Now, when you're marking up text or when you're marking up content, it's just meaning you're tagging or you're identifying certain sections of content for a website that should be identified in a certain way, and then you can then change how it looks based off of those tags. So really, when you're talking about HTML, you're going to be talking about tags. Tags are the way to go. So I have JS Fiddle open, and I'm going to start off with some basic tags just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Tags are letter or letters inside angle braces. Now, these are less than and greater than sign, so you know what I'm talking about. Most tags have an opening and a closing tag, and then everything in between them are going to be impacted. Now, first off though, any text that you just type into an HTML document. So if I type in hello world, any text that you just type in that's not identified by any type of tag, that is content that's just going to appear in the website. Now, there should be tags around it, but modern browsers are really great at doing their best to display whatever you get them. So if I type in this and I click run, we're going to see in my output below, hello world would output to the website. Now, I've not done any HTML code or tags at all, and I've already made a website that can actually run in a browser. But typically, you're going to start off your HTML code with a tag identifying it as an HTML document. So that tag would start off with a less than symbol or an angle brace, and then doc type with an exclamation mark starting it off, and then the document type would be HTML. So this is the first tag you will typically see in an HTML document. That's just identifying to the browser as soon as the browser opens up the file that, hey, this document type is an HTML document. Typically inside that HTML document, the next thing you're going to see is actually an HTML tag. And so I'm going to type in HTML, and now everything inside this HTML tag with its closing tag would be what the website would expect to be HTML code. All right, so I've got my hello world there inside the HTML. Now, if I run this, you're not going to see any change at all because it already was displaying HTML hello world right off the bat. So, but this is just identifying the starting and ending tag of all of the HTML. Now, the website browser did great before I gave it that information, but it is wise to go ahead and put that in. Now, inside your HTML tags, there's typically a tag for the head section of the website code. Now, the head section normally has things that you are not going to see. Now, it does include a title tag, and that's going to be what's in the tab at the top. When you have multiple tabs open in your browser and you can see what each tab is, that's the title. And that is going to appear inside what's called the head section. So if I open up the head section, I can put anything inside this starting and ending tag, and that'll be typically the stuff you do not see, and with the addition of the title. So title does have a tag as well. So I could put in the title tag, and it does have an opening and a closing, and anything I put inside this title tag is what would appear on that tab at the top of the screen when you have multiple tabs open. So I'm going to put in HTML intro. Now, so far I've added in a whole lot of lines here, but when I run, we don't see any change at all. Now, my indentation's looking pretty horrible. I should mention that when you have a starting and an ending tag, and then inside it more tags, typically you're going to indent that. So if I click this nice little tidy button, it's going to take care of that indentation for me. Very kind. So I have my opening, closing tags for HTML. I have my opening and closing tags for the head section. And then the other, which is typically visible by the user, is the body section of the document. So the body section has all of the content that you would see on the website. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in as well. Click my little tidy button. It's got everything nice and spaced out. And guess what? When I click run, no change at all. So we're learning a whole bunch of tags here that really aren't impacting what the user is seeing. And that's because the modern browsers are doing a great job in interpreting what they think I am wanting to display. Now, if you do have a computer with older browsers, it could have struggled in the beginning without all of these tags in there. So in that head section, in addition to just putting in a title, this is where you could put in metadata. So data about the website. You could put in the author. To do that, go ahead and take care of that. We would put in the meta tag. And then we can say, what is the name of the content we're wanting to change? And we're going to say that name equals the author. Now, once we've given it a name, we have to give it the content. So what is the content of the author? So who is the author of this? And you would put in the webmaster's name, whoever it is taking care of this content. And now that is actually a part of the information built into the website. Now the viewer is not going to see that automatically unless they're looking at the code of the website, but search engines can actually get to that. And they can also get to keywords. So you can put in more metadata, and that name would be keywords, and you could put in content for that keywords. And this would help browsers, when like search engines, when they're looking for certain websites, they could actually see that, hey, this is talking about HTML, this is an intro, we can talk about tags, and whatever keywords you want to put in the content, that's actually searchable. Another common thing that you might have in the head section would be the description. So I'm going to put in description. And this is where you could put in a description that could appear when a search engine finds your site and displays it to the user. They could see what you're doing. And I'm going to put in a small page to learn about tags. I'm going to go ahead and close that off as well. So this is all information that could be accessible, but typically not viewed by the user. Now in the body section though, this is what the user is going to see when they open your website. And the tags here that we put in will make a bigger difference. For instance, there's tags for if you want something to appear as a heading. So we have H1 tags, and when you put something inside an H1 tag, you're actually telling the browser to display it as a heading. And H1 is the largest heading by default. So this should be the first time we actually see a difference when I click run. Well, there we go. We finally saw a change. And that's because the H1 tag is actually telling the browser that hello world should be the heading, and an H1 heading is the largest. Now we do have it get smaller slowly. So H2 is slightly smaller than an H1 tag. H3, H4, H5, and H6 would be the smallest of the heading tags that you can use. Typically you don't see websites using past a few different of those, like H1, 2, and 3, but it is possible to go H1 all the way through H6. So we have the head section and the body section. They're both inside the HTML tag. So the HTML tag has an opening and a closing. The head section has an opening and a closing, and the body section has an opening and a closing. And each thing is inside that. It would be inside the head or inside the body. Now, you did probably notice that the one at the top, the doc type, that did not have a closing tag. There are a few that don't have closing tags, or the closing tags aren't required. Doc type and meta are two of those tags that aren't required to have a closing tag. Another one that you might see would be what's called a horizontal rule, or an HR tag. So you could put in HR, and that makes a horizontal line across the page at whatever point you insert that tag into the body section. And typically you don't have to use a closing tag for that. Another one would be a line break. It does not have to have a closing tag. So I could put BR for break. And when I run that, you'll see that there's just some empty space that appeared between my heading and my horizontal rule. So you can do that as well. So it doesn't typically have to have a closing tag. But most of the other tags that we're going to be using actually need to have an opening and a closing. So once you create the opening tag, like I have highlighted here, you would need to create a closing tag, and everything inside the opening and closing would be impacted by those tags. So for instance, let's go ahead and put in some more tags to actually change how things look. So I could say, let's go ahead and put in a underline or a bold. We can take care of that, maybe even italics. So if I type anything in here that's inside the body, but not inside other tags, it would just appear as normal text. This appears as normal text. So when I click run, this appears as normal text. This is bold. Now, right now it's not because I didn't type anything. However, if I insert a B tag, now it automatically put in the closing tag for me, which is very convenient. But if I put in a B tag and I hit run again, this is bold. So you can see how the B tag actually created this is bold in a bold text by the browser. So by putting in that markup or that tag, the browser displayed it as bold. Now you might want things to appear as different paragraphs. So you can put in a paragraph tag. This is a paragraph. Now notice I have an opening and a closing tag for the paragraph, and I'm going to go ahead and put in one more. This is another paragraph. And so now when I run this, I'm going to see a couple of different paragraphs here. And so when it's inside the paragraph tags, it's going to go ahead and separate that from the previous paragraph. Now I'm going to want just one word in this to be underlined. So I've got an underline tag that I can do. Now typically when you're typing, you would put in these tags and it would be auto-completing for you. Since I've already typed it, I'm going to go ahead and cut and paste that closing tag afterwards. And when I hit run, you'll see the underline appears here in that paragraph, but only on what is inside the underline tags. Now, if I happen to forget that closing tag and hit run, notice the underline just keeps going. So you do want to make sure that you close off your tags to make sure that it stops wherever you need it to stop. Oh, that's much better. So this is just a brief introduction so you can see how tags work. You typically have an opening and a closing tag, and everything that is inside that tag would be impacted by that tag. But there are a few things that don't have to have a closing tag, like the doc type at the top and the BR and the HR, though it is possible to have closing tags for these, just not always required. Well, you've made it to the end of the video. Well done, but don't stop learning.